Moreover, we know that peace demands a partner, which is why I said that Israel cannot be expected to negotiate with Palestinians who do not recognize its right to exist. And we will hold the Palestinians accountable for their actions and for their rhetoric. But the march to isolate Israel internationally, and the impulse of the Palestinians to abandon negotiations, will continue to gain momentum in the absence of a credible peace process and alternative. And for us to have leverage with the Palestinians, to have leverage with the Arab states, and with the international community, the basis for negotiations has to hold out the prospect of success. And so in advance of a 5-day trip to Europe, in which the Middle East will be a topic of acute interest, I chose to speak about what peace will require. There was nothing particularly original in my proposal. This basic framework for negotiations has long been the basis for discussions among the parties, including previous U.S. administrations. Since questions have been raised, let me repeat what I actually said on Thursday, not what I was reported to have said. I said that the United States believes that negotiations should result in 2 states, with permanent Palestinian borders with Israel, Jordan, and Egypt, and permanent Israeli borders with Palestine. The borders of Israel and Palestine should be based on the 1967 lines with mutually agreed swaps, so that secure and recognized borders are established for both states. The Palestinian people must have the right to govern themselves and reach their potential in a sovereign and contiguous state. As for security, every state has the right to self-defense. And Israel must be able to defend itself by itself against any threat. Provisions must also be robust enough to prevent a resurgence of terrorism, to stop the infiltration of weapons, and to provide effective border security. The full and phased withdrawal of Israeli military forces should be coordinated with the assumption of Palestinian security responsibility in a sovereign and non-militarized state. And the duration of this transition period must be agreed. The effectiveness of security arrangements must be demonstrated. Now, that is what I said. And it was my reference to the 1967 lines with mutually agreed swaps that received the lion's share of the attention, including just now. Since my position has been misrepresented several times, let me reaffirm what 1967 lines with mutually agreed swaps means. By definition, it means that the parties themselves, Israelis and Palestinians, will negotiate a border that is different than the one that existed on June 4, 1967. That's what mutually agreed upon swaps means. It is a well-known formula of all who have worked on this issue for a generation. It allows the parties themselves to account for the changes that have taken place over the last 44 years. Account of those changes, including the new demographic realities on the ground and the needs of both sides. The ultimate goal is 2 states for 2 people. Israel as a Jewish state and the homeland for the Jewish people, and the state of Palestine as the homeland for the Palestinian people. Each state enjoying self-determination, mutual recognition, and peace. If there is a controversy then, it's not based in substance. What I did on Thursday was to say publicly what has long been acknowledged privately. I've done so because we can't afford to wait another decade, or another 2 decades, or another 3 decades to achieve peace. The world is moving too fast. The world is moving too fast. The extraordinary challenges facing Israel will only grow. Delay will undermine Israel's security and the peace that the Israeli people deserve. Now, I know that some of you will disagree with this assessment. I respect that. As fellow Americans and friends of Israel, I know we can have this discussion. Ultimately, it is the right and the responsibility of the Israeli government to make the hard choices that are necessary to protect a Jewish and democratic state for which so many generations have sacrificed. And as a friend of Israel, I'm committed to doing our part to see that this goal is realized. And I will call not just on Israel, but on the Palestinians, on the Arab states, and the international community to join us in this effort, because the burden of making hard choices must not be Israel's alone. Even as we do all that's necessary to ensure Israel's security, even as we are clear-eyed about the difficult challenges before us, even as we pledge to stand by Israel through whatever tough days lie ahead, I hope we do not give up on that vision of peace. For if history teaches us anything, if the story of Israel teaches us anything, it is that with courage and resolve, progress is possible. Peace is possible. The Talmud teaches us that so long as a person still has life, they should never abandon faith. That lesson seems especially fitting today. For so long as there are those across the Middle East and beyond who are standing up for the legitimate rights and freedoms which have been denied by their governments, the United States will never abandon our support for those rights that are universal. And so long as there are those who long for a better future, we will never abandon our pursuit of a just and lasting peace that ends this conflict with 2 states living side by side in peace and security. This is not idealism. It is not naivete. It is a hard-headed recognition that a genuine peace is the only path that will ultimately provide for a peaceful Palestine as the homeland of the Palestinian people and a Jewish state of Israel as the homeland of the Jewish people. That is my goal, and I look forward to continuing to work with AIPAC to achieve that goal. Thank you. God bless you. God bless Israel, and God bless the United States of America.